We first saw the sort of crackdown happen with the Ant IPO more recently. And I'm wondering if you think this is just a continuation of what was going on, or if anything marks a change in how China is operating with its own tech companies.
Good morning, Melissa. Thanks for having me. I think it's definitely a continuation, but there's some differences here with Didi. And what we're learning is that China believes that cross-border data transfer and data security is a national security issue. They deem Didi a critical information infrastructure operator. And by that, they mean that they are concerned about how Didi is securing data, particularly when they list in the U.S. And they're worried about this new law that was passed at the end of 2020, the Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act, which means that U.S. regulators will have greater access to review Chinese listed companies. And look, with a 90% market share, Didi has a lot of Chinese riders, including some government officials. And China, a big brother surveillance state, no surprise, is concerned what nefarious things could happen to that data if it finds itself in the wrong hands. So this one is a little bit different than Ant, but yes, a continuation of a crackdown on its big tech sector.
Some of the controversy, James, surrounding this particular situation, is a report in the Journal yesterday saying that Didi was somehow warned by regulators to possibly delay the IPO. A warning from China or suggestion? It doesn't feel like China would suggest, or that a suggestion is actually stronger than a suggestion. I'm wondering what your take on that notion is, that China warned Didi to delay the IPO.
The party and the government over the last couple of years just showing who's the boss, whether it's on basic private enterprise and telling them they've got to adhere more to what the party says, or these big tech platforms that have kind of gotten kind of too big for their britches for the party. They have a lot of power. This is about data security. It's about personal information protection. It's what they call it data sovereignty. And they're looking at data as a future economic driver. So this is really a strong shot because, as the other guest said, this is about national security. And this is the first time they've launched a national security investigation against one of these big tech companies. But it's also about keeping IPOs closer to home. I think they want companies listing in Hong Kong instead of the U.S., and they're pushing that.
Yeah, and it seems, Dewardric, that maybe that's sort of a common ground here between the U.S. and China at this point, with the U.S., passing legislation requiring Chinese companies to basically open up their books. It seems like both countries are saying, you know what, China, it's going to be difficult for your companies to be here. You're going to have to make information available to us. And if you don't like it, go back home. And China's saying, stay here.
Yeah, I think that's right, Melissa. Although, as you well know, there's been a lot of IPOs here in the U.S. over the last 7 months. And I think many people were surprised by the appetite that U.S. investors had for Didi. But I think the Chinese are going to definitely make it more difficult for their companies. I agree with my other guests to list here in New York. They've already put in place additional controls that if you're a critical information infrastructure operator, you're going to have to get these new controls from the Cyberspace Administration and other places. So there are no longer going to be suggestions that you don't list until this is done. There are steps being put in place now that these companies will have to do before they list. And I think that could make it very difficult.
Dewardric, you think that the IPO pipeline of China companies waiting for U.S. listing, I think there are 30 or so in the wings, is that frozen?
I think it's certainly going to be delayed. And I suspect, Melissa, you're going to see some pre-IPO valuations fluctuate a bit. But I do think if they go through these steps, and the Chinese government is laying out these steps now, that we will see some of these companies move forward with their IPO. But it's not going to be as swift as we've seen in the first 7 months of the year.
And James, from the perspective of an American company operating in China, is there something that they should be concerned about in terms of their own intellectual property here or data?
Well, what American companies and foreign companies in China have been dealing with this for years. Their data has been brought to heel. They keep their data onshore. They follow government relations. It's really these big tech companies that have kind of not behaved the way the government wants them to. The foreign companies already are. Look what Apple did. Apple, on all its Chinese user data, not only kept it in China, but handed it over to a state enterprise in Guizhou so that they could get it off their own hands. So foreign companies have been brought to heel long ago. Now this is bringing big tech down, under control.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.